welcome to the Law Firm Blueprint. I'm one of your hosts, Jay Ruane, CEO of the Criminal Mastermind, managing partner of Ruane Attorneys, and all-around swell fella. Of course, with me, as always, another swell fella, my man Seth Jehoshaphat Price, who's down there in the DC area with Blue Shark Digital SEO for Lawyers, as well as the managing partner of Price Benowitz, DC, Maryland, Virginia, South Carolina, Florida, Louisiana, North Texas, East Oklahoma, and all those wonderful places. Seth, how's your week going this week?
It's going well. Ups and downs. There's always bumps in the road. Former employee left, and now we're like hoping that one case was taken care of properly. Like those types of issues coming up, but generally excited. I got Blue Shark has our twice a year. Everybody in the office from around the country will be happening the end of this week, and then I fly off to PubCon, which is a cool life event to be speaking in person for the first time.
Yeah, that's awesome. I've had an interesting week. I've been getting DMs and text messages from all sorts of people in my history because I was just seen on CNBC.
I know. I wanted to be able to, all of a sudden you go from just internet famous to being TV famous. How cool is that?
Well, so here's the question I got to ask you. Can I now say as seen on CNBC?
Dude, compared to the people that do it the way they do it, I mean, that's the part that kills me. The as seen on, where literally somebody sells you a package, where it's an advertising. We see it for Newsweek all the time. Ironically, I believe the person that you were speaking about there actually may have done that package with them back in the day. But people,
I think so.
There are all these different Wall Street Journal. They put an ad in one regional section. So I think that, for sure that will check the box.
So let me give the audience, the people who don't know, who are like, why the heck would Ruane be on CNBC?
Clearly not for stock picking.
No, I'm not doing Mad Money with Kramer. I'm not on Shark Tank, although that'd be kind of cool. So
you'll be on Shark Tank someday.
Who knows? There's this show called American Greed, and
just stop with that, right?
Yeah. So. A colleague of mine in the criminal defense space is now doing some jail time for being convicted of conspiring and defrauding Colombian drug dealers after promising them for $1 million plus he could then bribe a judge in the United States to make their cases go away. So this is a guy I knew. I actually did a
lot of us knew. This was a wildly popular, fun, cool guy.
Yeah, and
nicest guy in the space.
I'll say right up there, I love Jamie. I think he definitely did some wrong things in his life, but I don't think that your entire life is defined by the worst thing that you've done. At least I hope it's not for anybody. It's probably why I focus on criminal defense and pardons and expungements. It's my calling. And Jamie, unfortunately, is away doing time now for his involvement in this whole thing. But anyway, so I am getting DMs left and right because, he had a catchy name, the DWI dude, and he promoted himself well. And there was a video of him being interviewed by me. And I don't say a thing. They don't recognize my name, but it's me with a microphone holding it up to Jamie. And he goes, I'm Jamie Balasia, the DWI dude. And CNBC used that in their promotion and during the show. And so it's wild because I start getting DMs from people from all over the country saying, dude, did I just see you? What the heck just happened? And so I have to send links to the story and that type of thing. So it's been a kind of a crazy week. It reminds me, I got to send a letter off to Jamie in jail just to check in to see how he's doing. I know, it's terrible when anybody, it puts himself in that situation. But my thoughts are with him as he pays the price for stuff that he had been involved in. But I had done a business deal. I did a marketing seminar with him, and he always treated me well. Had integrity in the business dealings, and like I said, you're not defined by a single act in your life. There's other things about you. So it's just been a crazy week because I've been getting DMs and text messages. People are seeing it, sharing it. And boy, I look a lot younger in the video. You know, my hair's darker. I got more of it. It's kind of crazy. So that's been my week. It's been kind of crazy. But I got a bunch of things I want to talk to you about today. Just to, you know, because there's a lot of things. And I posted something on LinkedIn and it got some traction, and people were commenting on it. I'm going to post it up in the Law Firm Blueprint Facebook group to get a poll going there. But there's a lot of talk about A players, and you only want to have A players. And there's that famous Jack Welch thing: we fire the bottom 10% every year, that type of thing. And in some roles, I could see perhaps in finance, that's definitely something that you want to do because you are only as good as your numbers in finance. But I think if you are looking for only A players in every single, an A player receptionist, an A player, you know, whatever, paralegal, legal assistant, secretary, associate attorney. I mean, there's times and places in your firm where you want to have an A player. But I don't think it's conceivably possible to have an A player in every position. I mean, even look at professional sports that don't have a salary cap, right? Baseball doesn't have a salary cap. They don't even have A players in every position, but they can pay the luxury tax. And, you know, guys like Steve Cohen, they got billions of dollars. They can spend whatever they want. Is it possible to have an A player in every position set?
No, look, and it's ironically dovetails to a conversation we had off camera about the difference between a smaller firm and a larger firm. If you have one, if you have one assistant, you can be pretty picky. You know, hopefully the person stays. You know, as you build and scale, you know, our friend Andrew Finkelstein, you know, you start getting comfortable with mediocrity, because if you're not going to scale. Now, that's not saying we are good with it, that we don't want to constantly upgrade. It's not that we shouldn't be interviewing for culture, because there are times when it's maybe not an A player on, you know, academics or on the actual doing of work, but if they hit your firm culture and figure it out, and they're coachable, that you can coach them. Do you want C players? Of course not. But are there times when, like, when are you defining the A player? Is the A player day one, or is the A player when you've been there for a year and you've trained them? And so, you know, there are all these different nuances with it. You know, having spent a lot of time with Bill Biggs of late, he's done a great job working with our operations team. It's really ingrained in my head, culture first. And as we've interviewed for some positions, there have been people that are competent. You know, they do the job. I don't want to say they're A players, but B plus A minuses, let's say, who have a bunch of skills. But if culturally they don't fit, I'd rather take the B culture fit that's willing to build and grow than something that may be higher that's not a culture fit and won't build and grow from where they are.
Can you expand on that? What would be somebody that's not a culture fit? What are the when you talking to people in that interview process, what do you look for and say, oh, they're not going to fit in here culturally, or they will embrace our values and that type of thing?
No, it's a great question. And it's one that, you know, as I've moved from a guy who sort of, again, my own journey, where I'm like, core values was the plaque on the wall at the car dealership that didn't really mean anything, to sitting down and actually creating core values of, for us, passion, integrity, excellence, where we actually try to now hire, review, and if, you know, somebody, where would you not, you know, what would not be part of the core values, right? So if somebody doesn't really care about what we're doing, they're really PI defense minded, or they're really a prosecutor at heart, they're not going to have passion for what we're doing, right? You know, integrity, what do people do when you're not looking? You know, is this somebody who's going to do right by you? And excellence, you know, are they striving to do better every day? That's fundamental, right? That's not earth-shattering. What I would say, we just went through a situation where there was somebody who checked the box. They had longevity, a job that I love, but you know, they were going to have a problem with authority, meaning they were going to want their own fiefdom and not work collaboratively with the rest of our team. And as we've grown, we're now at that point. When you're smaller, it's like, can they get along with you and your staff? Yeah. You know, over time, it's, you know, as we talk about mid-level management and things like that, how are they going to fit within that mosaic? And this was a Bill Biggs call. There's Jay Henderson out there who does an amazing job sort of screening some of the stuff, and it's tea leaf reading. They're not 100% right, but they get those fundamentals. And if you see somebody who's really obstinate when it comes to authority and that they're fighting the power, stuff that you probably heard in your office a lot. It's not the way it used to be, things like that. As you're trying to prevent those personalities. And I'll just finish with when I remember when we first started our PI practice, we had a paralegal in particular who was amazing. Clients loved them. They were, worked around the clock, but it was feast or famine, probably some sort of, issues going on. And so while that's great, they were toxic with the other people there. So while they may work 30% more than somebody else in their slot, it doesn't matter because you can't build and scale with them. So who are those building blocks of people that will help you build and grow together rather than crushing it themselves, but not being able to allow the entire tide to rise, so to speak?
It's interesting. You talk about culture as being, the thing that you should be looking for and making sure people fit in. I was talking to somebody about people who've left their firm recently, and we started talking a little bit about culture. And one of the questions was, how do I develop a culture? I said, well, look, the reality is that the culture is developing whether you have a finger on it or you don't. So be intentional in the things that you're doing. And if you want to have a collaborative work, maybe you do a lunch every week with your smaller team, and to just, talk about other things. And those, especially in today's tight job market, people quit jobs, but they really quit the culture and the boss that they're working for. And if you can have a situation where there's a pull to another job, but your culture is awesome, people are less likely to jump if the financial change is negligible. So having that culture is a great way to try to retain talent, and making sure that you are keeping the people that you want to keep.
Right. And I'd say that that's one of the reasons I'd look at the Blue Shark. I can't take responsibility for it. It's been created by people beyond myself, where the culture is strong enough that you don't see any meaningful turnover for people. But that also means that you're going to continue to work and collaborate with people. And that, stuff that we've talked about on the show before, it's just, you're coming back to your first point, which was only A players. Like, not that the idea is looking culture first is a philosophy that I'm coming more and more to as I age and scale, that team. And I think Hazel talks about, if you have a mediocre plan, but it's, you execute, you sort of, everybody's on the same page versus, a perfect plan that you're not executing well. I think that's the analogy to this, which is if you have people that are building and growing organically with you, you're going to be in a position of strength compared to star players that are not with each other, because you're going to have fractional.
Let's go back to the professional sports analogy. I mean, you can have a star player. I mean, remember Randy Moss joined the Patriots, star player, and he was there for one season, and then Belichick was like, yeah, this is not going to work long term. Like and I think OBJ, had the same problem with the NFL. You get these star players that come in and they give one season, but they can't get along with the systems, and then they flame out. Now in that industry, people come and go, and it's baked into the model. In your small office, it's not necessarily baked in that people are going to come and go. I'm curious to see the future of law where you have these monster cases where it's really bringing in, the deposition experts, the trial experts, the pleadings expert, and you're grabbing the best people from different firms, assembling the team, having them work it, and then they all leave, go back to their own thing. Sort of like the way movie production is done in Hollywood. You get the best of what you can put together on a team, and then people do it, and then people leave. For some of the bigger high value cases or that type of thing, it could be something. But my opinion as to A players, I don't think it's possible to seat an A player in every role. And I really think that you need some grinders. People who are going to show up, they're going to work 9 to 5, they're going to get their stuff done, and then they're going to go home and clock out, and you're okay with that. You can't expect your, A players to me would be somebody who's committed above and beyond to the firm, and you can't expect every employee to be thinking about the firm at midnight.
But let's put it this way: it may be the definition of what an A player is, right? That the A player, what is A? A is a grade in school, right? Teachers may sometimes give you extra, pieces for effort. They may give you extra pieces for additional thought or perspective. They're different pieces. What is A to you? And that the fact that somebody is hypothetically a hard worker doesn't necessarily make them an A player. And that's, I guess, when you're talking about professional athletes, same thing. Just because there are great stats in one place, it may not be an A player within the Belichick system.
Right. Exactly. Okay. So that's the thrust of the conversation I want to have. Can you have an A player everywhere? I mean, I think and the other thing too, is that, if you're trying to place an A player in every position, you're going to miss out on a lot of good stuff that you could do with your firm, because you're so narrowly focused on one thing that you could actually turn off some of the other players and you get high turnover. But those are all.
But that's again, something I've talked about on the show. I always see this. I see it over and over again. The rule of 3 for new positions in general. First person may not work out, second person may not work out, and the third person ends up being the person who's your long term. The question is, I always wonder, can we skip those first two? That would always be the question. But it comes down to, the A sometimes is in the eye of the beholder. Sometimes you're making a quick hire to get a person in, but there are other times where it's not that what you think you need may not be what you need. Talking just here on the show, so many times we think we know something, and then it turns out actually that wasn't what we thought we wanted. We didn't need.
Oh, we went through that last year. We hired a lawyer that we thought was an A player, and in the context where that lawyer was coming from, they were an A player, but in our model, it did not work. And 6 months later, they're no longer with us, and somebody who we did not think was going to be an A player, thought was going to be a marginal, CB, but limp us through, has blossomed into the role. And so it's wonderful. But that leads me to my next topic of the day that I want to talk to you is, referrals are a major part of any practice ever. And there are some lawyers, I saw something in Lawyer on the Beach group about, how do you get your business? And almost everybody said referral. Not a lot of people were talking about marketing. So how do you deal with a situation where you have a longstanding relationship with a referral partner and it starts to go sideways or even worse, go south, right? There's competing interests. Other lawyers, they forget about you. They meet new and exciting people, so there's you're not the shiny new thing anymore. What should lawyers be doing to really maintain those relationships? Because I know I know you've been involved in helping lawyers mend fences on referral relationships. So what's your opinion on that?
Look, you're talking about, so from the point of view of maintaining them, I think it is the idea that is a job. Some people get it naturally. Some people have created vehicles. John Fisher's created a mastermind, and he has his newsletter, and he has his books. I mean, there are touch points, but I've studied it from the point of view of the white collar space, right? Each lawyer world is different, right? You are known as the Connecticut DUI guy, right? That's like nationally. And I ironically come back to Jamie. The reason we knew him is he was like the Texas DUI guy, the San Antonio guy, right? So what I see in the white collar space, which is much more transactional, because in that space, somebody represents the CEO, the CFO, the wife of the executive. It's a game where each of these people need to be represented. They can't be represented by the same firm. So all these people have to stay in touch with each other. So it's just constant networking, analogous to the PI space, where the bigger fish want the smaller fish to refer up and the smaller fish want the bigger fish to refer down. All of those things. One of the truisms, I just try to pick up like little pieces you hear, is if you're in the pure referral space, right, there are two different ways of going. There's touching through podcasts and other online media. Like, are you using LinkedIn or using Facebook ad? What can you do to stay in front of people on the one hand, while on the other hand, you have the people who grab coffee and lunch. This was something that was much more prevalent pre-COVID, has come back. I know people in DC that have built an entire B2B legal practice, very tough to do, by doing 3 lunches a week. And their secret sauce was dessert, which sounds crazy, but it was, I went through it. I was the mark. I had lunch. Lunch is 45, 50 minutes. Waiter about to bring the check. You're like, no, let's split a dessert. That extra time was huge, but is that scalable? It's an hour and a half per day plus money. Again, that's one world. The other piece, I guess, and the thing is, whatever it is, whoever you've been in touch with in the last 2 weeks is the person you're going to refer to. It sucks, but part of that is the case, unless it's a very niche play. So I think it's figuring out how to build depth of relationships and then how to make sure you stay top of mind. One of my favorite referral PI lawyers out of Chicago does a wonderful job on Facebook just talking about food. Does a wonderful job where he's not talking about law, but everybody in his extended circle nationally knows if you need a Chicago lawyer or if you need somebody to parachute on a big case, it brings him to top of mind. I think that's just genius.
So one of the things that I'm on my to-do list for the second quarter this year is to actually go through all my email addresses that I've accumulated over 25 years and actually create a mailing list of all the lawyers that I have referral relationships with over 2 decades, right? And just start pinging that list, once a month and check in from Jay. Here's what's going on in my world. And since it is other lawyers, it's going to be, hey, I'm coaching Little League, that type of thing. Just, but I'm also, here's some of the interesting cases our firm is working on. So I want to create a newsletter targeting other lawyers. I'm going to be putting out another 2 books this year. We got Tiger Tactics 2, the CEO edition is going to be coming out probably towards the end of the year. And then as well, I've got a law student helping me with a DUI trial book, a criminal trial book based on my DUI one that I'm going to get out and send out to people. So I'm thinking that I should be doing that. But here's the other thing that is interesting, and this came up in an offline conversation this week. A lot of lawyers tend to get referrals from older lawyers who didn't want that work and passed it down. So like, I know for a fact, when I was starting out in my late 20s and 30s, I was taking work from lawyers in their 50s and 60s who didn't want the headache of dealing with that issue or that courthouse or that client. It was small potatoes, like DUIs back then. These are guys who are handling murder cases, sex assault cases. They would send me their DUI case, right? Now I'm 50. Those lawyers are 65, 70, 75. They're starting to retire. And so those referrals from them to me are slowing down. And I'm thinking to myself, why have I not been concentrating on the lawyers behind me to generate referrals from? The lawyer who says, whoa, this case is a lot more complicated than I'm comfortable handling. Let me send it up the line. And it's sort of like what you talked about in the PI space when you got big dollars and that type of thing. I don't think a lot of lawyers do any work into cultivating referrals from the people behind you. And I see a lot of lawyers that are now 60 years old who had an entire practice based on referrals who are sucking wind for business.
Agreed. A couple things. One thing I've seen that by analogy, again, that I saw in the white collar space was that people generally refer to people of their generation. Like there are exceptions to every rule, but like generally it is harder because the guy who's referring to you, the currency is, are you referring back to him? And you have your network already. And it's hard for a new guy to break into it. So while you would love to get the referrals up, how much do you really have to send back, given that you already know where to send a lot of the stuff that you need? And so to me, I'm always sort of, it's the theory, yes. And even like the newsletter, the idea is, how do you add value, right? And it's one thing what you think is important, And again, this is not being critical. I'm just sort of whiteboarding with you. But it's like, it's nice to know about your kids. They can get that from Facebook. What is it that would make them money? What is it that would bring them joy? I think what you're doing on the consumer side, you're so drilled in, and we're now following your footsteps as far as giveaways through newsletter, right? Starbucks gift cards got more engagement we've gotten in a long time. Awesome, right?
I kind of know what I'm doing.
Yeah. So the question is figuring it out, and like you will, right? So just like we talked about other things we figure out, like you want to do a B2B newsletter, freaking brilliant, right? We all do it. And then we say, screw it, we'll just put it in the same one. Like that. How many times have you're like, I'm going to do that separate one targeted. And then you're like, well, then I do 2 newsletters, got to proof those 2. I'll just send my B2B people the B2C newsletter and hope for the best. And you know what? You're getting probably 75 cents on the dollar because they're getting your name. They're remembering you. The question is, what you're going to sit there at some point and say, what is the marginal cost to do the second one plus the pain of segmenting out that list when they're already on your B2C list? How much more will I get from that? Is it worth it? And the answer is probably, but
I don't know. But my thought is, we're killing it with engagement when we do our, dog of the month and our review of the month, and we're doing all these giveaways to our consumer base. I'm thinking I can do the same. I got Yankee tickets, I got concert tickets, I got hockey tickets, I got, restaurants I can do dinners at. And if I start to see people engaging with my newsletter, and they're opening it up and they're reading it every month, I can reach out to them and say, hey, why don't you come to a show with me? Why don't you come to a game with me? Why don't you come, that type of thing. And I'm thinking it can't hurt. Look, I'll give it a shot. What's the worst that happens? It fails.
No, but it's not. You're trying to. There's absolutely no downside to it. The question is versus the serendipity of that versus, hey, I know where my top 15 referrals are. Am I taking care of them? And then so it's like it's a time and attention. If you have the bandwidth for both, great. But to me, the first place you go is to those basic ones. And you know what? You have a you say, hey, I already do this massive thing there. What could I do, that would tie into can you double dip with it? Is there a way that you could create, if the B2C clients are looking at it for the giveaway, could you put something that's sophisticated enough that the referral partner is going to care about? And if you could get 2 with 1, even better. Like, yes, ideal, 2 separate ones, but then you're like, okay, I have a whole division doing newsletters.
Which may not be the wrong thing. I mean, especially if you can hire, a VA that can be in charge of your, B2B newsletter every month. I mean, obviously there's some training that goes into it. And these are just the things that I'm throwing out there for the audience to see. There are things that you can do that aren't necessarily straight digital dollar marketing. It's more about relationships. My plan for this year has been customer service and referrals. We're getting our customer service lawyer out there making phone calls. It's taking a little longer because of some health issues. And I'm really focusing on the referral traffic because, my cost per acquisition for a referral, after, everything is like $42 per acquisition.
Right. So and obviously we're in the midst of, again, it's so funny. So I went the full digital route and I always looked at the Ben Glass world that had the VIP clubs. And I was like, that's so cool, but I just don't have the bandwidth. We're doing our first happy client dinner along, I'm doing a test on radio. We're getting our DJ to come. People who love this DJ, they'll be in the room with them. The idea is starting to put more thought to purposefully looking at who are your bigger connectors.
Yeah, that's what it all comes down to. Okay, last topic for the day. Okay, we'll keep it kind of short. Phone numbers. I know we have friends in the industry that can get you repeaters. I have a branded number, 888 Lady DUI, that we have worked with our Lady DUI brand since it started. We've always used that number. It gets, people remember the name, they remember the number, and it works. I know you've recently got a repeater in your local areas. Is there value to phone numbers anymore, or in a digital world where people are texting off of their phone? They can Google. I mean, a repeater was great in 1983 when you're driving down a highway, you see a billboard, you got to remember that number because you're going by it at 70 miles an hour. But nowadays, everyone's got their phone that they can look you up pretty quickly as long as they remember who you are.
So I want to call myself a digital native because that's too strong, but as one of the early digital players, I was very much just didn't care about numbers at all. I wanted the tracking. People were clicking, as Jay just said. You just click on it, and nobody's typing the numbers in. As in recent quarters, as I've started to think and expand beyond just digital, I see benefits when you go offline branding. Nobody's going to remember a number, period, no matter how good it is, unless it's pristine. And those are the ones that I think you have a better shot at. So it's funny. I was talking the other day to somebody about jingles, which is one way to get a non-perfect number remembered. And to me, that takes a lot of resources to get into somebody's head. For the average lawyer on this, I guess, for the average lawyer here, you're not going to have the resources to brand anything. And that was one of the reasons to me. I'm like, hey, if I'm going to be on radio, I might as well have something that theoretically at some level could be remembered. And I'll tell it to you this way, which was kind of interesting. I did a meeting with the station the other day, and I was kind of surprised because they said, oh yeah, so-and-so, we get phone calls to the station asking us who that person was. Like they said our name. We don't do websites because it's too complicated, but they said the name, and they're like, oh, and they'll just, the sales rep gets all those incoming calls and just says, now part of it's BS because they want you to think that they're people calling, right? But part of it is, it's clear that people are not retaining much from an ad, even though we think so much of ourselves. And so I feel that like, that's one of those areas that I think it depends. You don't love that answer, but in your world where you're mostly digital, but I would say hypothetically, if you had spent your career with and you have the lady DUI number, but with a number that everybody was, J for DUI, something like that. If you had done something that was out there, there is some value to it. If you make your brand with that, then, it can work. I remember I was 222 cat KATT in college. That was my phone number. People still remember that from way back when. So look, it is not a panacea. It's not like, hey, I'm going to get a great number. I'm going to make a mint. But I think it's like everything else. How do you use it? If J becomes that number and it's on your back, it's on your piece there, and people are like, if there was, hypothetically 203 call J, people would remember that. That is brandable versus, J Ruane 23. That's a lot harder to actually get.
Yeah, it's funny. I tried to get 800 call J years ago before I knew people in the space. And all I had was the AT&T toll-free lookup tool. That's how I got 888 Lady DUI. And we have a bunch of other numbers.
What about 203 call J?
At this point, I don't want anybody calling me. The best time
it's that brand, silly.
I want nobody calling me.
You say that, but you still like it when the money hits the bank account. So I would encourage by next week. I want to know is 203 call J available?
Yeah, probably. I can't imagine. I'll just dial it and see who answers. That's what I'll do. Yeah. That type of thing. But I mean, that's really what it comes down to is how you were going to use it. I did radio. I know you're getting into it. I did radio for a while. To build my Mr. Speeding Ticket brand. And literally it was 30 seconds of people just saying Mr. Speeding Ticket, MrSpeedingTicket.com. And I just had, like 30 different people, old men, young women, all different ages and that type of thing. And they would say it over and over again. And at the end of my contract run, the radio station came back to me and said, we would love to renew your contract. We need a new ad. And I'm like, what do you mean? And they're like, we get more complaints about the 30 seconds and now 15-second runs of just your name and .com over and over again. We get hate mail. We get complaints. We get people commenting on our webpage about how it's the worst commercial they've ever heard. And they were like, we will renew it. We will give you a better deal, but you cannot run this commercial anymore. I'm like, this is effective. This is exactly what I want.
Question: why is that not on YouTube?
It is actually. It's running right now as a YouTube ad, and it gets hundreds of comments. This thing is an earworm. It's killing me. I can't get it out of my head. But you want to know something? We get phone calls every single week saying, I can't believe I'm calling you. I remember you from 4 years ago. I couldn't get it out of my mind, and I got a speeding ticket, and I remembered you. So, I mean, that's how, that's
And
how
it's funny. I see some people that I really like the way they do. I really like Mike Morris's use of his mother, and the stuff that Lerner puts together for him is awesome. That said, it is funny as I start to meet these people, like, the radio salespeople are radio salespeople. You've met them, you've been in the circles, what's, and part of it is we're sitting there trying to figure out what's the perfect thing. I think what you just said kind of proves a truism. It's repetition, and again, it is amazing how many people, and you see it. Like, you see the late night ads for the ice machine that apparently went wrong, and you look at how is this making money, and you're just like, it's getting it on the air. So, I mean, there are guys in my market, I know that who do TV, they're like, it just works. Like, meaning, again, it works less well than it used to. I'm not saying I'm running out and, but the idea is how much media can you put behind a brand name, and how many. Morgan is probably the biggest name. He's just like, he doesn't track, he just spends money and he makes more money. It's just fascinating. You and I are laser focused on how do we optimize this and how do I position that. It's to a large extent, the mass media does work, but I think it works less well in the space that you are specifically in, and that you've done so well with both the referral piece nationally and locally, saying, hey, this is what I do, I'm proud of it, I'm going to do this on one hand, and on the other hand, figuring out how to target people at their moment of need.
Yeah, I mean, that's really what it comes down to. It's interesting. What I'm going to do at the tail end of this show is I'm going to go out and I'm going to find the old audio clip, and after we cut away, I'm going to drop it in there. And I'm curious if people are listening, if people are watching, comment on this and let me know what you think about this earworm. A good friend of mine, Chuck Rathburn out of Indianapolis, helped me put it together years ago, and boy, it gets passionate people hating on it, but they don't quickly forget me, and that's what I want. So that's going to do it for us this week here on the Law Firm Blueprint. Thank you so much for being with us. Of course, you can catch us every week, 12 p.m. Pacific, 3 p.m. Eastern, live here in the Facebook group, and of course in other Facebook groups like the Mastermind Experience of John Fisher. As always, if you want to take us on the go, you want to catch up with us when you're not able to watch live, you can do it by catching up with our podcast, the Law Firm Blueprint Podcast, wherever you get yours, either Apple, Google, Amazon, Spotify, whatever. We're there. Give us a 5-star review, and let us know in the comments what your thoughts are about this week's show. For me, I am Jay Ruane. Seth, any parting words?
No, just have a great weekend. I'm looking forward to Austin.
Awesome. Have a great time in Austin, Seth. I will see y'all here next week. Bye for now.